Good morning. We've got strikeouts and wins sleepers coming up for you next on the RotoWire Fantasy Baseball Podcast. What's up, guys? Welcome to the Saturday edition of the RotoWire Fantasy Baseball Podcast, brought to you by Fantrax. You can get 15% off any RotoWire product with code YouTube15. Today, I'm joined by Jeremy Schneider. Jeremy does a few sports for us here at RotoWire. Today, we're going to be zeroing in on the baseball side of things and continuing our category sleeper series. The two categories today, as I have previously alluded to, strikeouts and wins. So all pitching today. But first, got some headlines to get to. And unfortunately, the headlines are usually tied to injuries. That is no different this week. First one, Jeremy. Kyle Stowers set to undergo an MRI. He's got a tight hamstring. We don't know much beyond that. Hopefully just a precautionary thing. I mean, anytime a hamstring's involved, if there's any doubt at all about whether it could be serious, you want to go ahead and get some testing done. But feel like it's kind of more just to keep an eye on it kind of situation for Stowers at this early juncture. Are you moving him down your draft board at all?
No, for now I'd agree. You see a hamstring, and that's not a great thing. But until he's undergoing imaging, if there's something more conclusive that comes up in the next couple of days, I would definitely keep an eye on that. But for now, just worth monitoring.
Yep. Yeah, we don't know much yet. That news just popped up this morning. He was, I think, scratched from maybe the lineup, and then they're going to send him for an MRI. So fingers crossed. Maybe we know more by the end of the weekend what's going on with Kyle Stowers and the Marlins. Zack Wheeler, another news item. Kind of interesting news that popped up yesterday. I mean, he threw a bullpen session Thursday. That was his first since he had Venus. I'm not sure how to pronounce it. Thoracic outlet syndrome surgery last September. Said he was throwing it like 85% effort. I never know how those guys estimate it, whether it's 85%.
Yeah, that
You're throwing at that level effort. They basically have things to measure everything, so maybe they actually know what percentage effort they're throwing with. But I digress. But he said he felt great. Rob Thompson mentioned afterward that it could be the beginning of a six-week ramp up for Wheeler, and if all goes well, he could be ready to pitch in big league games at the end of that 6-week stretch. That falls on April 9th, would be 6 weeks from Thursday. So early April we're looking at in the best case scenario. It's the venous thoracic outlet syndrome surgery. There's two different TOS surgeries. He had the less severe one. Merrill Kelly is a recent example of having one who came back and was fine after, had that version of the thoracic outlet surgery. The other one is often a career ender. We've seen it happen many times, but Wheeler did have the less serious version. Still plenty of risk there, but how are you evaluating this recent news item on Zack Wheeler? Does it alter the way you're feeling about him ahead of your fantasy draft?
Yeah, with a guy when you hear TOS, it definitely makes you pause. So I think going into this offseason, looking at Wheeler in terms of fantasy draft, I was definitely more hesitant, and I think this is some decent news to say that he could return early on in April. And I think that depending on the value, Zack Wheeler's the guy that you would love to have on your fantasy baseball team. He's been consistently dominant for, the last several years. With that being said, hearing this news this far out, it's good to hear. but I wouldn't take this timeline as definitive by any means whatsoever. So I'm
Right.
still exercising caution, but certainly a good development.
Yeah, I mean, it's all any timetable right now is very rough, very approximate. And Rob Thompson alluded to it himself, and so did Wheeler. Wheeler, I believe, said he didn't even know when his next bullpen session was scheduled for. So that gives you an idea of how rough the timetable is. But early signs are promising for the recovery of Zach Wheeler. And I tweeted this out when this news item broke, I was kind of already feeling this way about Wheeler. I mean, he's been picked in NFBC drafts around pick 140. I think at like 137 is his ADP over the last month. I just feel like there's a good chance we're going to look back and say, how did we let him fall that far? But it's always a risky game to play, the injury optimism game. It's a very slippery slope. You know you're going to have injuries on your team at some point, and so why would you invest in a guy you already know is hurt? But it also tends to lead to potential value as well if that guy winds up being okay and looking like the Zach Wheeler we know. So I do think he could wind up being a really good value, but we're still a long ways away from knowing for sure.
No
Now,
doubt.
another guy in a somewhat similar situation, veteran pitcher, Blake Snell. This news wasn't really surprising at all. It seemed to be pointing this direction, but Dave Roberts basically confirmed yesterday that Blake Snell is not going to be ready in time for opening day. He had the shoulder issue at the beginning of last season. Maybe he made one start and then they shut him down for a while. I can't remember exactly what the timetable was on that.
I think he made one or two, I think he made 2 starts and then was shut down.
Yeah, and then an extended absence after that. Came back and pitched really well in the second half. Blake Snell just goes through these stretches where he just looks like the best pitcher in baseball, and it's fun when that happens. It doesn't happen for an extended period of time usually. But yeah, he's coming back from the shoulder issue. It doesn't seem like he's quote unquote injured right now. It's more like a fatigue thing that they're just kind of slow playing. But he's only throwing from flat ground right now. He's got lots of ramping up to do. How do you view Blake Snell as we sit in late February? Is he a potential value? Is he someone you don't want any part of?
Blake Snell, I can't trust it. He's a guy that we've seen him, go full seasons. He's won 2 Cy Youngs, but as of late last year, he only threw 60 regular season innings. The year before with the Giants, just about 100. And if you're the Dodgers, you have no incentive to push him to the limit in the regular season. You have an incredibly deep starting rotation. The goal is to win a World Series. I think they're going to be incredibly cautious with Blake Snell. When he's out there, he's, like you mentioned, he goes through stretches where he looks like the best pitcher on the planet. But with, the general injury concerns that follow him throughout his career, in addition to the fact that the Dodgers have the resources to be overly cautious with him, he's a guy that, considering how high he's going, being mocked as a top 100 pick, I don't think you're going to get the volume to, have a strong return on investment.
Yeah, I mean, you hit the nail on the head with the Dodgers. I mean, the Dodgers are paying him $182 million or whatever it is they gave him with that contract to pitch in October. I mean, they have, as you mentioned, very little incentive because they're just so much better than other teams. They can afford to do this. They're so much deeper. So if Blake Snell comes back, if he does the same thing he did last year, where he just pitches well in the second half and then in the playoffs, they're fine with that. There's a chance that he could come back earlier than expected and have a awesome 5 months or whatever, but I just don't think the Dodgers have much incentive to push him. I mean, and they have the depth, as I mentioned, to cover for him. I mean, you look at the rotation depth chart right now. You've got Yamamoto, Ohtani, Glasnow, Sheehan, and Sasaki should be locked into the top 5. That's not including Snell. And the Dodgers are going to go to a 6-man rotation. They always do. So that leaves, not including Snell, Gavin Snone, Justin Robelski, River Ryan, Ben Kasparius, Landon Knack. I mean, I have some level of interest in basically all those guys, but they're just going to do a patchwork job. I mean, you saw the Dodgers ride their starters a little harder last year than they did have in the past, just because, I mean, that was really the strength of their team. I don't know beyond Yamamoto, maybe Ohtani to a certain degree that they're going to be able to do that. I mean, I'm big on Emmett Sheehan like most people, but I just don't know what level workload we're going to get from him. But yeah, just back to Blake Snell. I mean, he's going like 20 picks ahead of Zach Wheeler. I would take Zach Wheeler heads up without hesitation. I just have more faith that he's going to be healthy and pitch a good number of innings. And yeah, I would take him heads up, not even factoring in that he's actually going later than Blake Snell in drafts. But yeah, I just don't have much faith that he's gonna be a useful fantasy option for several months for an extended period of time.
Wheeler's a guy that has, a workload, workhorse reputation to him, and
Mm-hmm.
his value to the Phillies rotation is just significantly more important for the regular season in terms of depth than Snell for the Dodgers. I think you hit the nail on the head.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great point with the Phillies' depth too. I mean, their depth is actually very, very thin. So they're going to need Zach Wheeler this season. Okay, let's get into our category sleepers. We're going to start with strikeouts, and just a general question right off the bat. What do you look for, Jeremy, when you're trying to find those strikeout sleepers?
Strikeouts, obviously, first and foremost, when you're looking back, you can take a look at the simple K per nine. That's a pretty easy go-to. But I think when you break down pitch mix, when you look at a guy that has a strong fastball that he can pair with a wipeout secondary pitch, I think
Mm-hmm.
looking at that can help project a guy. Maybe he didn't, strike out a ton of guys last year, but when you have a solid secondary pitch to put guys away, that's the sort of thing that can lead to a big jump into the next year.
Yeah, and I'll also point out too, I think what can go overlooked sometimes with strikeout sleepers is volume. Some of these guys aren't necessarily going to give you like a massive K per nine numbers from a rate stats perspective, but if they give you enough volume, they can still be helpful in the strikeout department. I'm going to have one guy that I think is a good target for that reason coming up. But your first guy, not necessarily a guy we can count on for volume, but pretty sure when he's going to be on the mound, he's going to be very good. And why don't you go ahead and list off your first strikeout sleeper?
Yeah, we kind of accidentally segued into him perfectly talking about some other pitchers with injuries. I took a look at Shane McClanahan, who's coming in around the 245 mark in terms of NFBC ADP. This is a guy that we haven't heard from him in a while. He hasn't pitched since 2023, but man, he at the top of his game can emerge as one of the best starting pitchers in baseball. He has a career K per nine over 10, an ERA across his 3 seasons that were, just a tick over 3. He is fantastic. Obviously, the pitfall with him is injuries. Nerve issue in his left triceps from last spring held him out. The previous year had to have Tommy John surgery, but and that is baked into an ADP at 245. You don't typically see a guy with those sort of career numbers going that low, but health is a legitimate concern. So with him, I'm excited to see making his spring debut on Tuesday. I think that might not tell us a lot in terms of performance per se, mainly looking at how's his fastball velocity, the sharpness of some of his breaking pitches, but to see him come out of that feeling healthy, feeling good. When you're talking about sleepers, guys outside 200, you want to get as much volume as possible on certain guys. But with McClanahan, even if you can get, a healthy partial season from him, he has all the makings to be a dominant force on the mound.
Yep, without a doubt. And you alluded to it, but I should have mentioned off the bat. To qualify for our quote unquote sleepers list, we are using NFBC ADP of 200 or later over the past month. So that's your qualifier there. But yeah, I'm with you on McClanahan. He's just going so late that it's a fine roll of the dice at that point in the draft. You have a good amount of faith that when he's going to be on the mound, he's going to be really, really good. He's the type of guy too that if he looks great in spring training, looks healthy, his ADP could jump way up. So if you have an earlier draft, go ahead and get your Shane McClanahan shares now before they go up a little bit. Shane McClanahan's former rotation mate and also a fellow Shane. I have Shane Baz as my first strikeout sleeper. Really undone by George Steinbrenner Field last year, that minor league park that the Rays were playing in. 5.90 ERA, 146 WHIP. He gave up 18 of his 26 home runs, came in that park. On the road, much better. 3.86 ERA, 1.14 WHIP. 24.8% strikeout rate last year for Baz. That was right at his career rate of 24.5%. And that overall number is really pulled down by 2024 when he was just coming back from Tommy John surgery. So I think the upside is for even higher for a strikeout rate for Baz. Average 97 miles per hour with his four seam last year. That ranked in the 88th percentile. Dishes slider for a cutter. I'll be interested to see what the Orioles have in store for him just from a pitch mix perspective. But we saw Baz show flashes of this upside last year. He had 13 starts with 2 or fewer earned runs, had 3 starts with 10 plus strikeouts last season, but the consistency just wasn't quite there. I think he goes to a new organization. Maybe they have a way of optimizing his repertoire, and he can find more consistency. I like Shane Baz a lot as a strikeout sleeper. Jeremy's next guy. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, I'm a big fan of Baz in general. He's a guy that, came out with big prospect pedigree. His fastball continuing to tick up is a solid indicator, and being able to, shift out of that ballpark, just any sort of natural, regression to the mean with that is huge.
Yeah, and keep in mind, Camden Yards much more pitcher friendly now than it was a couple years ago. So I think that'll be good for Shane Baz. Next on your list, Jeremy, who you got?
Next on my list, I have Logan Henderson of the Milwaukee Brewers coming in at about a 313 ADP. This is a guy that last year kind of fell victim to the fact that the Brewers' starting pitching depth has been fantastic, and it remains fantastic, but he seems ticketed for a rotation spot. He made 5 starts last year in the big leagues, 1.78 ERA, whip below 1, a strikeout per 9 at 11.7. That number, I don't know if I'd venture to say will stick across an entire season, but it is worth noting he's a guy that throughout his entire minor league career, he's had a K per 9 above 10. He has a nice, fastball changeup mix. He really lives on it. He's a guy that could use to add maybe a third more defined breaking ball. But the opportunity to have a full season in the rotation for Henderson, I think he's a guy that is primed to, be a fixture in Milwaukee. Milwaukee's known for developing their starting pitch and getting the most out of those guys. I think he's someone that if he can make, 20 plus starts with an ADP outside the top 300, he's going to rack up plenty of strikeouts to provide strong return on investment.
Yeah, really like the skills with Logan Henderson. A little worried about the health. He had the flexor issue last season, missed the last couple months, but clean bill of health right now. So if that elbow holds up, I do like him to return a nice ROI at that rate. My next guy, I'm going with Zac Gallen of the Arizona Diamondbacks again. His ADP pre-re-signing with Arizona 227, after re-signing 225. So basically unchanged since he re-upped with the Diamondbacks. ERA was way up last season. Home run rate was way up. Strikeout rate was a little down, but velocity was fine with Gallen. He still got whiffs with his primary 2 secondary pitches. The home run rate was just absurdly high last year. It basically doubled from what it was the previous 3 years. Think that's going to just get some positive regression there. He's just 30 years old. I do expect him to bounce back from a strikeout perspective, but even if he's not getting you more than a strikeout per inning, he's one of those guys that I mentioned before. He gives you so much volume that he's not going to hurt you in the strikeout department, even if he doesn't bounce back from a rate stats perspective. So I think that's something that can be overlooked. A guy like Sandy Alcantara is that way as well. Doesn't give you a strikeout per inning, but he's hopefully going to pile up so many innings that he's going to wind up being a pretty solid source of strikeouts regardless. And I think Gallen falls into that bucket. He's going to be frustrating. He's kind of a chronic tinkerer with his mechanics and stuff that can cause him to go through his ups and downs. But I like him to provide volume, and I like him to be a solid source of strikeouts.
Definitely volume a big time with Gallen. He's another guy that you would put in that workhorse category.
Yep. And this guy, maybe not necessarily in that bucket, but gosh, I've been infatuated with the upside of this guy for a long time, and he's going to be going back in the rotation this year. Who you got for your next guy?
Back in the rotation, someone that, it's hard not to be bullish on him. Former top 10 pick. I'm talking about Reid Detmers of the Los Angeles Angels, coming in with an ADP outside the top 400 at 413. This is a pick that is not based on my belief that he'll necessarily, turn in an ERA in the low threes necessarily, but based on a track record that this guy, whether he's at his best or struggling, he's going to punch guys out. Over the last 3 years, he's recorded a K per 9 above 10. Last year, he worked exclusively out of the bullpen and looked a lot better. Obviously, in terms of velocity, that, going to tick up when you're being used in shorter bursts, but the numbers don't lie. He, had a chase percentage in the 95th percentile, whiff percentage in the 93rd percentile, a K percentage, 90th percentile. Those are all just really strong indicators of his ability to generate swings and misses. And when you're talking about a guy outside the top 400, you'd be hard pressed to find many guys with the repertoire and the resources to generate, consistent misses like Detmers.
Yeah, and you mentioned, full-time in a relief role last year, just 63 and 2/3 innings. But, I mean, he's had the workload before, so I don't necessarily think that should be a big stumbling block, even though he moves back into the rotation. I mean, I think he should be able to handle 150-plus innings pretty easily. I don't know that the consistency is going to be there, but I've, as I mentioned, been infatuated with Detmers for a long time now, and he's still just 26. I think a breakout could still happen for him. I've got another lefty here, Joey Cantillo of the Cleveland Guardians, 2.96 ERA, 25.9% strikeout rate in his 13 starts with the Guardians last season. Pitched out of the bullpen first for them, but after going to the minors for a while to get stretched back out, came back, rejoined the rotation. He was awesome down the stretch, 2.18 ERA, whip just over 1, strikeout per inning, just 14 walks over 45 and a third innings over the last 2 months. Cantillo's not a hard thrower, sits in the low 90s with his fastball, but his changeup is just a phenomenal pitch. Whiff rate near 50% with that offering. You look back at the minor league track record, missed a ton of bats, 31.3% strikeout rate on the farm. The rub with Joey Cantillo, doesn't throw enough strikes. That's why you can get him this late in drafts. He's got an ADP near 300. But he did throw more strikes down the stretch last year. I don't know that that's ever going to be a strength of his. I suspect it's probably not, but he's been a consistent bat misser wherever he's been. And you mentioned the Brewers are a good organization that typically gets the most out of their pitchers. I would say that the Guardians kind of fall into that same bucket. I like the upside with Joey Cantillo, even though there might be some ups and downs because of those control issues. But at that price point, that could get you a lot of strikeouts there. And we have not a starting pitcher next, but Jeremy's going to throw a reliever at you with some strikeout upside. Who you got?
Yeah, a little bit of a wrinkle with Padres reliever Jeremiah Estrada. And first, I must say, I've been a longtime Joey Cantillo guy, mainly based on the premise that as a former soft tossing lefty, that sort of brand has to stay together. But looking at Jeremiah Estrada, he's not a starter, nor is he a closer. He's kind of your more typical reliever. So he comes in with a 440 ADP. But man, if you're looking to find someone with late value that's going to provide you some strikeout upside, it's Jeremiah Estrada. This guy, all he does is generate whiffs. Last year, he had a K percentage at 35.5%. That's good for a K per nine at 13.3, which is already astronomical, yet somehow was down from last year when his rate was at 37.3 with a K per nine at 13.9. He just has huge usage in the Padres bullpen. The Padres love leaning on their back end. It's the biggest strength of their team. So between him and Adrian Morejon, the Padres love calling on their safety valves. This is a guy that had 73 innings pitched last year and just consistently misses bats, has a high 90s fastball to go with, a number of other strong pitches. He uses I believe he calls it some sort of, like, I think it's a chitter, but it's officially classified as the split finger that has an XBA at about 100 with a whiff rate nearing 50%. He is just such a premier and steady strikeout guy. Again, he's a regular reliever, not in a closer role. So an ADP, at 440 makes plenty of sense. He's a very situational fit for your team. But if you want a guy that's going to deliver strikeouts out of the bullpen, Estrada is your guy.
Yeah, you nailed it with the situational fit. I mean, I love the skill set with Estrada, especially in those leagues that have innings limits. If you're looking for a lot of strikeout bang for your buck, that's a great guy to target. Also, if you're in holds leagues, a great guy to target. And those guys like Estrada can often be a better pick later on in your drafts than your low upside nominal starting pitchers. You can maybe be better off going that route, even though you're not going to get the wins, not going to get the other things that come with starting pitchers. I've got Grayson Rodriguez, my next strikeouts sleeper. And we know the deal with Grayson Rodriguez. Injuries, a major issue, missed all of 2025. Had the lat issue, and then he had the elbow issue where he had bone spurs removed via surgery. But healthy now and promising returns, at least from a velocity perspective. In his first spring training outing, he averaged 96.1 miles per hour, topped out at 98.6 miles per hour in his spring debut. Career strikeout rate of 25.7%. Look back in the minors, absolutely ridiculous. A strikeout rate near 36%. And this is really just the fact that he's going so late. ADP over the last month, almost 300 for Grayson Rodriguez. I don't love that he's going to the Angels, I'll be honest. I feel like, we've mentioned the Brewers and the Guardians about team organizations that are known for getting a lot out of their pitchers. The Angels are basically the opposite of that. The fact that the Orioles were willing to trade 5 years of control, maybe 4 years of team control for 1 year of Taylor Ward probably should send off some alarm bells. But again, it comes back to the price with me, and a pick near 300, you're just not going to find that upside very easily. I don't trust him to stay on the mound at all, but I'm pretty sure when he's on the mound, he's going to be pretty good. So Grayson Rodriguez, worth a look at that draft day cost.
That value, I think, like you mentioned, the Angels are not considered one of the premier pitching organizations, but with that sort of value given, his former pedigree, it really did look like he was starting to find his footing in
Mhm.
2024 before injuries got on. I think there's so much to, to hook yourself on.
All right. Your fifth and final strikeout sleeper. Who you got?
Last, but not necessarily least, I have Cade Cavalli of the Washington Nationals. This is a guy, former, first round pick that has really struggled with health. He comes in with an ADP at 449. He was able to get back on the major league mound in 2025, which was first and foremost the most important step. Made 10 starts down the stretch with a 4.25 ERA, whip at about 1.5. 7.4 K per nine and 48.2 innings doesn't necessarily scream strikeout sleeper, but I think when you look under the surface, there's something to like. He was able to register chase rate in the 90th percentile and above. And I think with his pitch mix, in such a small sample size, the numbers don't really do justice to that. I really like what he's doing with the knuckle curve and fastball. In general, just didn't get quite the results that you might have expected. But when you have a big arm with a high 90s fastball and some different put away pitches, the ingredients are there for a step forward. I think it definitely takes a little bit of a leap. That's why he has an ADP at 449, definitely more of a deep league dart throw. But someone in a rotation, an important part of this is it's a Nationals rotation that is impressively thin. He grades out as one of their frontline starters alongside, maybe Josiah Gray. With that point being that he'll have plenty of opportunities in the rotation. Um, Deep league dart throw is the best thing I can say with Cade Cavalli.
I like Cade Cavalli a lot. And yeah, you mentioned that the strikeouts weren't there last year, but look at the strikeout rate in the 18th percentile, but the whiff rate in the 72nd percentile. I mean, that those numbers should not be that far apart. Um,
Something's got to give. There's going to be a
yeah,
little bit
I
of
mean,
stabilizing at
he
least.
got whiffs with with a couple different secondary pitches. His whiff rate was high, and he was throwing even harder last season than he did pre-surgery. That's a promising sign. He also avoided the barrel, 95th percentile in barrel rate, 93rd percentile in ground ball rate. I mean, that's a recipe for a guy who could break out. So I really like the Cade Cavalli pick. Um, my final strikeout sleeper, Zebby Matthews of the Minnesota Twins. I mean, he's been a bat misser at every level, both in the minors and the majors. Look back in the minors, 29.2% strikeout rate, just a 3.2% walk rate so far at the major league level. Really good numbers. Strikeout rate near 25%, walk rate under 7%. But the reason you can get Zebby Matthews this late in the draft, got a career ERA near 6. And this is kind of a lesson in the difference between control and command. He's got really good control. He's got really bad command. He can throw strikes just from a avoiding walks perspective, but not necessarily very good at putting the ball exactly where he wants. And because he's an extreme fly ball pitcher, that leads to a lot of home run issues and a bloated ERA. But those are the kinds of guys that can be maybe just one little tweak away with their mechanics from unlocking a better command. And if that happens, I'm very confident he's going to miss a bunch of bats. The start should be there with the Twins. They're in a rebuilding phase. They already lost Pablo Lopez for the season. And I think the starts are going to be there. And if they are, I expect the Ks to be there. I don't have a ton of confidence that the ERA is going to correct a long way in the other direction. He could always have the home run issues, and that's going to create some frustration from start to start. But I do like Zebby Matthews just from a pure bat missing perspective.
I agree fully. That's a guy that, I think one of the biggest things when you're breaking down possible breakouts and sleepers in the offseason, you look at what some of the peripheral metrics say. He ran an ERA above 5.5, but with a FIP below 4, and a draft range like this, definitely worth some consideration.
For sure. Okay, we're going to get to win sleepers next, but first, got an ad read for you from our friends at Fantrax. Fantrax is the most customizable fantasy platform in the industry, offering the greatest fantasy experience for your dynasty, keeper, redraft, and best ball leagues. Coming from another service, Fantrax makes it easy. Fantrax can import any of your current leagues and customize if needed. Fantrax offers the most in-depth player pool in the industry, including many minor leaguers. Do you need a customizable commissioner service for your fantasy league? Fantrax offers more customization than any other platform. I can vouch for that. I use them constantly. Waivers, categories, scoring system, schedule. Fantrax offers custom solutions for all that and more. And this is the best part, it's free. Sign up for free today. Simply go to fantrax.com/rotowire and sign up today. That's fantrax.com/rotowire. Fantrax, the home of fantasy sports. And we are back with you now to continue our category sleeper series. We covered strikeouts for you. Now we're going to look at wins. Jeremy, what do you look for when you're targeting wins sleepers?
Wins is such a fascinating stat category, particularly pertaining to the fact that the value of wins in modern baseball outside of fantasy has lost a lot of its value. But in terms of fantasy, I think the biggest thing to look for is number one, volume. You got to pitch a lot to be able to earn those wins. Two, a track record, a significant track record of volume that kind of plays into it. And three, being on a winning team, playing for teams that are going to consistently be competing. It's the sort of thing where we've seen guys have fantastic statistical years in terms of, ERA, rate stats, and whatnot. But ultimately, you're going to need the bats to provide a little bit to rack up that win category.
Yep, I think you nailed it. You want a guy that pitches a lot of innings. You want a guy that pitches for a good team. It's not really rocket science in that regard, but that's sometimes the most simplest answer is the correct one. So with that note, who you got for your first guy? He's on what should be a very good team. He has provided volume in the past. Guy from the Cubs is your first win sleeper.
Yes, sir. Starting off with Matthew Boyd, coming in with an ADP hovering around 234. He's coming off a really strong season where he put forth a 3.21 ERA, 109 WHIP in 179.2 innings, made 31 starts, and in that win category, he racked up 14. I'm not of the business of saying that he's going to repeat those exact numbers. There's definitely some signs of regression, a higher FIP, as well as just, he's a guy going into his age 35 season. But those 31 starts, being able to show volume for a guy that earlier in his career had done that back in Detroit, had made, consistently 25 plus starts the last few years, struggling with injury, him to show that he can provide a full season's workload is huge. And that coupled with being on a Cubs team that, I won't venture to say if they'll necessarily win the Central, but certainly should be competing at the top with the Brewers, looking to get back to the postseason. I think, entrenched as a starter on a good team, coming off a strong season, 14-win season, even if there is some regression in terms of ERA and some of those rate stats, you're looking to get, some solid wins for a guy outside the top 200. Matthew Boyd feels like a very solid option.
Yeah, and something that I feel like can get a little overlooked with Cubs starters too is their defense is just so good. It can cover up some of the issues that the starters might have. And Wrigley Field also has, I feel like, a reputation in the general public as more of a hitter's park, but it's really not. It's a pretty good place to pitch most days. You are going to have those wind blowing out at Wrigley days. That's not going to be a day when you're on the mound, and so you could have your occasional blow-up start, but it's generally a pretty good place to pitch, and he's going to have an excellent defense behind him. Feels a little weird calling this guy a sleeper given how good he's been over the last several years, but Aaron Nola was not good last year from a bottom line results perspective. ERA finished over 6, but peripherals were still pretty good, more than a strikeout per inning. Walk rate was under 7%. Velocity was down overall for Aaron Nola, but if you look at the numbers after he came back from injury, it was right in line with his career norm. Extremely durable pre-2025. Last year were actually his first missed starts since 2017, and those starts were not missed because of arm-related issues. So that's not something we have had to worry about at all with Aaron Nola. His ERA is going to remain a question mark. I mean, it's fluctuated often year to year. He can have some home run issues, and he's not a guy who going to blow you away with stuff with velocity, but he's going to give you a bunch of innings. He's going to be pitching for a really good team. So even if there's going to be ups and downs along the way, I have a high level of confidence that Aaron Nola is going to bounce back from a wins perspective.
So much track record with him. This is a guy that, he's gone over 180 innings, and I believe 6 of his big league seasons, he's gone over 200 3 times. When you're pitching that frequently, the wins will come.
Yep. And another guy with a pretty lengthy track record, but missed last season with injury. Who's your next guy on your list?
Next up, I have Joe Musgrove of the San Diego Padres coming in with an ADP at about 251. As you mentioned, he missed all of last year going with Tommy John surgery. And his previous 2 years with the Padres definitely struggled a bit with injuries. But this is a guy that has racked up 10-plus wins in 3 of his 4 seasons with the Padres. And, not just in the wins category, just overall, he's been stellar as a San Diego Padre. His highest ERA was in 2024 with a 3.88 ERA. He's been hovering consistently around that 3 mark. And a factor in terms of closing out wins, the Padres, they might not want to, they've said that they're willing to let him pitch, without any sort of innings limit, and I believe that. But they also have the luxury of that, you can get 5 innings out of Joe Musgrove and then turn to that fantastic bullpen. A huge part of getting those wins is making sure the bullpen doesn't blow it. And the Padres have as good of a bullpen as you'll find in Major League Baseball. We talked about Jeremiah Estrada earlier as one of them. Joe Musgrove has just such a strong track record of pitching at a high level that, provided he's able to make, upwards of 25 starts and have a healthy season, which of course is an if. You never want to guarantee that. But with an ADP at 251, that feels like really good value for a guy that not so long ago has performed at a very high level over a full season.
Yeah, age 33 season, the Padres aren't going to be super concerned about that workload, even coming off of a missed year. They've mentioned being careful early on, but as you mentioned, if he can just give the 5 innings, 5 and dive early on, that still could be enough to get wins because that bullpen is so good. And love Joe Musgrove as a late target in drafts this year. Quinn Priester of the Milwaukee Brewers is next on my list. He had a 4-month stretch last season where he didn't take a single loss. He went 12-0 over a 21 appearance stretch. Not counting on that happening again in 2026, but Priester did get better as the season went along. The strikeout rate early on in the season was not great, but the last 15 appearances up at 23.2%. That's better than the league average. He had 3 10-plus strikeout games. So trending in the right direction as the season went along. He also topped 165 innings between the majors and minors, so the workload is not really going to be a concern. He's got an elite defense behind him. The Brewers also have an awesome bullpen, and I'm not still really sure how they did it, but they had a top 3 offense in baseball last season just as far as runs scored goes, so he should have some offense backing him. I think they're going to give him more chances this year to go 6-plus innings. That's going to give him a better opportunity at wins. And I know this isn't the strikeout section, but I do think Quinn Priester actually has a little bit of a sneaky strikeout upside as well. But just from a wins perspective, I like him as a target.
Yeah, and getting in on the Brewers' success, it'll be maybe hard to rack up as many total wins for the Brewers as they did last year, but that's a team that is going to be very competitive and win a good chunk of games.
We got another veteran for your next win sleeper. Who you got?
Yeah, we got an older guy that's been around the block, pitched for a lot of different teams. Talking about Michael Wacha of the Kansas City Royals with an ADP at 443. Pretty big jump from some of the other guys we were talking about. And I can understand why his value is where it is. The surface numbers aren't going to jump off the page last year. 3.86 ERA, 1.22 whip across 31 starts and 172.2 innings. Certainly solid marks, but nothing crazy. But what stands out to me when we're talking about that win category, he made 31 starts. He pitched over 170 innings. He was able to hit that 10-win mark. He's had, 10 plus wins in 4 straight seasons. Along with that, he's had reliable durability with at least 23 starts in 5 straight seasons. The Royals, as a team, we'll see they're a team that could go either way. They ultimately did not make the playoffs last year, but they certainly have aspirations to compete for the playoffs. Point being, they'll, be good enough that if he turns in strong outings, if he's able to produce that sort of ERA below 4, those wins can come. I think 10 wins is perfectly attainable once again. With an ADP at 443 and in deeper leagues, that's really dependable value.
Yeah, Michael Walker is a guy who you don't love spending your last pick on or second to last pick or whatever on, but then he winds up turning a nice value basically every year. So not
Yeah,
exciting.
it's not beautiful, but he gets it done.
Yeah, not exciting, but he usually ends up paying dividends by the end of the season. My next guy is Mike Burrows of now the Houston Astros. I could have put him in the strikeout section too. I think he's got some strikeout upside. He had a 24.1% strikeout rate last year, 27.2% in his minor league career. Really good changeup from Mike Burrows, had a 43.1% whiff rate with that pitch. The results with the fastball weren't as good, but he does have good velocity with that offering. Maybe Houston can unlock a little more in that regard. And the Astros need innings. They lost Framber Valdez, who was a workhorse for them. And beyond Hunter Brown, they really don't have much assured workload after that. I think they're going to ride Burrows pretty hard. He had about 130 innings in 2025. I think he could easily stretch out to 160, 170 innings in 2026. He's also further removed from Tommy John surgery they had a couple of years ago, so maybe he takes another step forward as he's further removed from surgery. Really like Mike Burrows in his new stomping grounds in Houston.
Very curious with him. He was an interesting name to be moved this offseason. Definitely flew a little under the radar. I think the opportunity to have a full season in an Astros rotation that does very badly need someone to step up and provide innings. A lot to like there.
Got another veteran who changed AL East teams for your fourth pick.
Yeah, I'm going back to back with guys that aren't super flashy, but have the track record of meeting the criteria for a strikeout sleeper, and that's Chris Bassitt of now the Baltimore Orioles, coming in with an ADP at about 458. It's very similar to Wacha in that category. He has hit 10 plus wins in 5 straight seasons. He's made 27 starts at least in 5 straight seasons. And he's coming off, it's a similar story. He had a 3.96 ERA, 1.33 WHIP across 170 innings, 31 starts last year. It's not going to be anything special with Bassitt. He's a veteran going into his age 37 season. You look at, the repertoire isn't going to blow by anyone by any means. I'm not here to say that he's going to reinvent the wheel in 2026. But when you're looking late round, I know there's a ton of inclination to go with upside with some of the younger arms, and there's plenty of reason to. This is a very, once again, situational pick. But if you want someone steady at the end of the draft in some of those deeper leagues, you know exactly what you're getting with Chris Bassitt. And I think in such a, baseball's such a game of variety. You never know what's going on. To be able to use one of those last picks with someone that has such a steady track record, it feels like, it might not be super fun, but it's certainly understandable and justifiable.
Yeah, I feel like Bassitt's kind of maybe just actually a little better version of Michael Wacha. I feel like he's got a little more assured workload and also should be playing for a better team, I think. So I like him as a win sleeper. Um, my next guy, it's been a little bit of a theme. Guys coming off missed seasons. We've named a few of those guys, and well, Lopez didn't. Reynaldo Lopez is my next pick. Should mention that, by the way. He did make one start last year, but then had the shoulder surgery, missed the rest of the season after that. It was arthroscopic, so not a major operation. And you look back at 2024, that was his first full-time season as a starter since 2019. He had a 1.99 ERA, 27.3% strikeout rate. No, it wasn't a real 1.99 ERA, and that he didn't really deserve a ERA that low, but the ERA indicators are still pretty good. 358 Sierra, 292 FIP for Reynaldo Lopez that year. The Braves seem really confident in the health of both Reynaldo Lopez and Grant Holmes. I mean, it seems very obvious that they should probably go sign like a Lucas Giolito or a Zach Littell, somebody like that. But the fact that they're not and don't seem to have any inclination to do so gives me some hope that they do have a lot of faith in the health of Lopez and Grant Holmes. They might not be right, but I mean, at this late stage of the draft, you can get Reynaldo Lopez after pick 350. I think it's worth a gamble at that late stage. Should mention velocity was down in his first spring training start, averaged 91.5 miles per hour, but was reportedly hitting 93 to 94 during live BP. So maybe he's just needs a little bit of time to get ramped back up. I would keep an eye on those velocity numbers. If it sticks in the low 90s throughout spring, I'll probably back away from Reynaldo Lopez. But if it creeps back up, I think he has the potential to return some value.
For that value, I think it's totally worth a chance. And, 2025 was just kind of a tough year for the Braves overall. A lot of brutal
Mhm.
injury luck, and it'd be foolish to say that 2026 is off to a much better start with Schwellenbach dealing with injury, Hurston
Yeah.
Waldrep undergoing surgery, won't have AJ Smith-Shawver. Um, to guarantee that Lopez will stay healthy is certainly something that neither us nor the Braves can do. But the way that they've shaped that rotation, they very badly need him to and are in position to give him a lot of opportunities.
All right, your fifth and final win sleeper. Who you got?
I have Nick Martinez, now of the Tampa Bay Rays, coming in with a very deep ADP of 599. I thought I'd close things off with something a little off the wall um, with Martinez, a guy that last year with the Reds, he had 40 appearances, 26 of which were starts, totaled 165.2 innings, a 4.45 ERA, 1.21 WHIP. Totaled 11 wins, though, and those numbers were definitely a big step back from his previous few years in Cincinnati and San Diego when he had ERAs below 4. Um, but when you talk about a Rays team that should be, generally competitive in terms of playoff aspirations, we'll see if it comes through, but a team that should be competitive, Martinez is going to give you a heavy workload no matter what. And there is some, quote unquote reliever risk with him, but one way or another, he's going to be providing bulk innings, be in line for a lot of decisions. He's gone back to back years with 10 plus wins, neither season in which he's been entirely a starting pitcher. Last year, he was primarily used as a starter. 2024, he had more appearances out of the bullpen. This is a guy that, again, with an ADP at 599, we're talking very, very deep. But there's still a lot to like with those peripherals. He doesn't walk a ton of guys, doesn't allow a ton of hard contact. Um, I'd stop short of saying that he's going to have a full-on renaissance with a huge year with a ERA that's maybe high twos, low threes kind of thing. But again, when you're talking about someone that's going around pick 600, if you want someone that can sneakily rack up some wins, I think Nicky Mart's someone that qualifies.
Yeah, and that was kind of eyebrow raising. I thought that he got 13 million from the Rays, and I think that's a good sign that they feel like they can squeeze more out of him. And they are an organization that's certainly proven capable of doing that. But the fact that they gave him that contract and are sticking him right into the rotation, that leads me to believe that they have something on their hands with Nick Martinez. The upside not great, but Rays are going back to Tropicana Field next year, so he's going to be pitching in a good hitter's park or a good pitcher's park. I like that Nick Martinez call. Also, if you're in a league that has SP and RP spots, he's eligible at both of those positions as well. Mitch Keller, my final guy. Mitch Keller never really took that big leap that many, myself included, thought he might take, but he has turned into a very reliable workhorse for the Pirates. He's averaged 31 starts over the last 4 seasons. Over the last 3 seasons, he's averaged 183 innings. ERA over the 4 seasons during that stretch has been between 3.91 and 4.25, so consistently mediocre from an ERA perspective. Also saw that strikeout rate go down a little bit last season, but Pirates should be more competitive this season. They actually spent a little money and made some trades to acquire some offense. So maybe you got more offense backing Mitch Keller. It wouldn't be difficult to improve upon what they had in 2025, but I do think they could be competitive this season. I mean, he went 6-15 with the Pirates last year, but I mean, he could conceivably flip that around and go 15-6. Certainly not expecting that, but he's a guy who's consistently shown workload ability over the last several seasons. Pretty good pitcher's park. Should be a better offense backing him. And you're looking at an ADP outside 400. So I think a Mitch Keller could return some value there.
Death taxes Mitch Keller over these last couple of years. It's been a steady dose of about 30 starts, respectable production. And yeah, if you're a believer in the Pirates taking a little bit of a step forward, if he makes 30 starts, there's certainly line for there to be some improved value in the win category.
For sure. Okay, that'll do it for our sleepers picks, both in the strikeouts and wins perspective. Jeremy, you got anything you want to plug? I know you just put out your breakouts and busts at second base. Give that
yes,
a read.
Sir.
Give that a read at rotowire.com. By the way, again, you can get 15% off with the code YouTube15. But you've done a few of those series. We were or a few of those articles for the series that's on the site with sleepers, busts, breakouts. You want to go ahead and plug that a little bit before we sign off?
Happily, that's what this year RotoWire, first time ever doing a very expansive series. We started off with sleepers, going position by position, did an article on some outfielders. If you're a Dalen Lyle fan like myself, I would definitely suggest checking that one out. Just went through some second base breakouts and busts as he alluded to, and then I personally will have one more going on relievers that's set to come out, I believe, next Thursday or Friday. So definitely a super helpful series. I think, being able to write those articles has helped me with my own research, and then, from the rest of the RotoWire crew, so much value to be had deep in these drafts.
Yep, great stuff. All right, appreciate you joining me, Jeremy, and thanks to everybody checking us out on YouTube and on the audio side, wherever your podcasts are, wherever you listen to your podcasts. We'll be back next Saturday with some more category sleepers, but until then, take care and good luck if you got a fantasy draft coming up.